I'll be surprised if you tell me that you don't know him. We have seen him in movies, cartoons and comic books. He is our very own Mowgli. Don't you think Mowgli represents early humans? Well, we all must have read in our history books sometime that we humans have evolved from what are known as apes. So it is said that our earliest of ancestors are a descendant of apes. So today, the humans, also known as Homo sapiens, have gradually evolved over a very long time from apes. So it was not a spontaneous change by which we evolved as humans or Homo sapiens. So it is believed that in earlier times, that is millions and millions years ago, we were somewhat like this. And these are generally referred to as apes. But we eventually grew or developed into this present human form. Now, why are we talking about humans, Mowgli, and our ancestors? Well, when we read about humans and apes, we read it from our history books. But where do you think these history books got the information about these apes and these early humans? Well, we found these early humans in the continent of Africa first. So we did not exactly found the ancestors or the early humans, but we definitely found their remains in Africa. So Africa is often regarded as the cradle of humankind. Now, why do you think Africa is regarded as the cradle of humankind? Well, it is because it is the birthplace of the earliest or the first humans. So it is believed that human life has originated in Africa. So more particularly, the southern portion of the continent, that is South African region, is regarded as the cradle of humankind. Here we have found the oldest remains of the early humans. Now there's a very famous cave known as the Sterkfontein cave in the southern Africa. There we have an imperative museum that preserves the oldest fossil fuels of these humans. Now it is said that the evidence found here are as old as 3 million years or more. So as I mentioned, the Sterkfontein caves was declared as the World Heritage Site in 1999. And this is mainly because of the oldest remains or the fossil fuels of earliest humans that are found in this region. So this is why Africa is rightly regarded as the cradle of humankind. So Africa, that is regarded as the cradle of humankind, is a place where the earliest remains or the oldest remains of early humans were found. So if you take a look at all these pictures, you will know they are definitely not of a recent origin. They can be dated back to millions of years. So Africa is the place where the remains of first humans were found. So the first human fossils were also found in Africa. Now if you take a look at this particular skull, this is believed to be of the ancestors from which we have probably evolved. That is, the humans are believed to be evolved from the ancestors, the remains of which is this evidence. So the continent of Africa definitely is an interesting place and has a lot to offer, not only to the archaeologist but also to us common people. Now the question arises, where exactly and how exactly this continent came into existence? Well, it is because of the breaking up of the Gondwana land. Well, we all know that in the earliest time, there was one landmass called Pangaea. So just like a jigsaw puzzle, all the continents were fit together and then eventually they broke up to become as we see them today. So Africa is believed to be a part of the Gondwana land and then it came into existence. So these images here will help us understand how Pangaea or the supercontinent broke up into two other land masses. So in the northern half we had Laurasia, and in the southern part or the southern hemisphere we had the Gondwana land. So it is in the Jurassic period that the Gondwana land got separated or fragmented because of the emergence of the Atlantic Ocean. So the Atlantic Ocean divided the Gondwana land into two halves, right? And we got South America and Africa. So the eastern coast of South America was divided from the western coast of Africa, and eventually over the years they got further separated and then they exist today as we see them. So this is how Africa emerged or got separated from the Gondwana land. Now, have you heard of the largest desert in the world? Well, we all know that the largest desert in the world is the Sahara Desert, which covers more than 3 million square kilometers of area. Now, the largest desert of the world, that is the Sahara Desert, can be found in the continent of Africa itself. So, Africa serves as a home to the largest desert in the world, and that is the Sahara Desert. Now, Sahara Desert is a hot desert and it is located in the northern part of the continent of Africa. So, before we go on to understand how Africa serves as a home to the largest desert region, we need to settle down and locate the continent and then go on to answering the query, why is this continent home to the largest desert of the world? Okay, so before we do that, let's have a look at this question. So, which of the following is the largest desert in the world? Could you help me answer this? Well, is it the Thar Desert or the Atacama Desert or the Sahara Desert or the Gobi Desert? Yes, you already have guessed it right. The correct answer is the Sahara Desert. So, the Sahara Desert, which is found in Africa, is the largest desert in the world. Now, if we see Africa in the world map, we'll understand that the continent covers a huge landmass or has a huge extensive land area. So, right after Asia, which is the largest continent of the world, we have Africa as the second largest continent. So, Africa is the second largest continent of the world after Asia. Now, to answer the question of why continent of Africa is home to the largest desert region, we'll take a look at the longitudinal and latitudinal extent of the continent. So, from the map we understand that the continent extends from 35 degrees south latitude to 37 degree north latitude. And we also see that it stretches from 17 degree west longitude to 51 degree east longitude. So, we see that it covers a vast latitudinal and longitudinal extent on the planet Earth. We also can very clearly see that equator right here divides the continent into two halves, right? And this is why the continent falls both in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere. We also see that the prime meridian crosses the western part of the continent, and this puts the continent into the western and eastern hemisphere. So, we can say that Africa is the only continent on earth that covers all the four hemispheres, that is northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, western hemisphere and eastern hemisphere. Now, other than these, we see that the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, both being an important imaginary line or important latitudes, also crosses the continent. So, we see that the continent is definitely unique, having all the important latitude and longitudinal lines crossing through it. Now, besides that, what do we see? We see that the continent is mostly surrounded by oceans on almost all sides. We see that we have the Atlantic Ocean to the west of continent, while we have the Indian Ocean to its right. We further see that to the northeast part we have the Red Sea separating Africa from Asia. And in the very north, we have the Mediterranean Sea separating Africa from the continent of Europe. So, almost on all sides, the continent is surrounded by huge water bodies. So, now coming to the question, why is the continent a home to the largest desert of the world? In the previous map, we understood that the northern portion is where the Tropic of Cancer is passing. That is, it is a temperate zone that falls here. Now, because of this, the region does not receive enough rainfall as compared to the central portion or the western coast where the equator is passing through. So, while the northern portion is mostly covered by a desert region, in the central region we have the wet Congo Forest. Now, you must be thinking that falling in the equatorial zone, this region should have been more hot or more warm than the northern portion. But we also know for the fact that the equatorial region, besides receiving direct rays of the sun almost throughout the year, is also the place where precipitation is maximum. This is why we find wet rainforest in the central western coast of the continent. Besides that, we see that the desert region covers mostly the northern part and some parts of the southwestern coast. We further see that right south to the desert region we have the grasslands. Now, the savannas or the grasslands of Africa cover 65% of the continent. So, it stretches over the central portion, the eastern portion and the southern portion of the continent. So, we can clearly see that this vast continent is a place of three major regions, that is the desert region, the grasslands and the wet Congo Forest. Even having a desert region in the northern part, it served home to one of the oldest civilizations, that is the Egyptian Valley Civilization. This is because of the presence of an important river, that is River Nile, which provided it with important fertile grounds and provided the opportunities to grow a lot of crops. Now, this River Nile also gave the place a rich cultural heritage. So, River Nile, that is the longest river in the world. It flows in the northeastern part of the continent. So, the Egyptian Valley Civilization, that is one of the oldest civilizations of humankind, flourished along the banks of River Nile, right? And this River Nile is the longest river in the world. Now, another interesting fact about River Nile is that it is a perennial river. Now, you must be thinking that there are no snow-clad mountains in the desert region, and neither the desert region receives enough rainfall. So, how does a perennial river exist in the northeastern part of the continent? Well, this is because this perennial river is served by or is fed by a lake. So, Lake Victoria is the source of the longest river in the world, that is River Nile. So, River Nile, that is a perennial river in the northeastern part of the continent, is served by or fed by a lake called Lake Victoria. Now that we know the location of the continent, and we also understood that the continent is quite unique and interesting as it serves home to the longest river and the largest desert. Now, besides that, have you ever wondered or have you ever heard that why is the continent called the Dark Continent? Well, the continent of Africa was discovered after a very long time, that is around the mid-19th century, and it was referred to or called as the Dark Continent mostly by the Europeans. Now, what was the reason behind it being called as the Dark Continent? Well, now, there were many explorers, particularly the Europeans, who were in a mood to colonize and came to discover the continent. But unfortunately, they couldn't discover or enter the continent. This was mostly because the continent was a plateau region, and in the northwestern part, on the northwestern coast, the plateau all rise at steep slopes that discouraged the explorers to enter into the continent, and thus they returned. Now, this acted as a positive impact because it saved the continent from early colonization. However, after many years, due to technological advances and modernization, the continent was eventually discovered by the European explorers, who then exploited the people there because they were not exposed to the outside world. So after being colonized by the Europeans, the people of Africa suffered from extreme poverty, backwardness and slave trade. So the period or the process of recovery or development was very difficult for the continent of Africa and for the people of Africa. Now, as of a report of March 2019, more Africans are now escaping extreme poverty than they are falling below the poverty line. So we see that even after being discovered after so long and being exploited for many years, the continent and the people have eventually emerged to stand pace to pace with the current world or the current global scenario. So this graph here helps to represent the number of people who were suffering from extreme poverty. We see that initially poverty started declining, or the number of people into poverty were decreased due to the recent developments. However, it suddenly rose and then the poverty kept rising. But eventually over the years and from recent studies, we understand that the continent is doing much better in standing with the current global scenario, and the poverty is believed to decline further with time. Now from this report, it is estimated that with a slight acceleration in the growth of poverty, the continent could actually go into extreme poverty. So if the continent lags behind in running or in walking step by step to the current scenario, then it might face a very unfortunate situation of extreme poverty. So the continent is still discovering and is actively in the race of going pace to pace with the international bodies. So in this lesson, we were able to understand how the continent of Africa came into existence, how it was referred to as a dark continent by the Europeans because it was impenetrable and they found it very difficult to enter into the continent because of its natural geographical features. However, due to later technological advances, the continent was discovered and exploited for many years. Today, the continent is doing all its best to keep pace with the current global scenario. We also learnt about the location of the continent and saw how it is home to the largest desert in the world. It also serves home to the longest river, which was the reason behind the flourishment of one of the oldest civilizations, that is the Egyptian Valley civilization. So in our next lesson, we will take a look at the boundaries of the continent and see how the continent is surrounded by or linked to the surrounding continents. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock test. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.